living the divine life? Many of us are not, and there just might be a few things keeping us from this. Welcome to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. In our program, you'll learn to use the tools that have been given to you to make changes that you need, and by doing so, come one step closer to living that divine life. Now, here is your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson.
Namaste, my beloved Seventh Way family. I greet you with blessings of joy, health, prosperity, and love, acknowledging your divinity, how great thou art. So as we center ourselves with a nice inhale and exhale, I bring today's meditative thought from the October 31st entry of Creative Thought magazine, which begins with Thomas Troward, a quote from Thomas Troward from the Edinburgh Lectures of Mental Science, where he says, "First form the ideal conception of our object with the universal mind, and then affirm our knowledge of the law is sufficient reason for a calm expectation of a corresponding result. We can then turn to the affairs of our daily life with the calm assurance that the initial conditions are either there already or will soon come into view." The affirmative prayer by Reverend Nancy Fagan, Jacksonville, Florida. I live in calm assurance. There is one power and presence permeating everything in the universe. I rejoice, for I am an individualized expression of spirit as it moves in its entirety, in, as, and through me. I clarify my desired intentions, wisely choosing those that nurture and uplift me and bless my world. Cooperating with the intelligence of the universe, I live in right action, able and willing to make any necessary changes so my demonstrations work through me easily and peacefully. In calm assurance, I go about my daily life, knowing my declared intentions are now complete in divine mind and appear in due time in my world of effect. Grateful, this is the truth of my being. I completely release any concern or anxiety as I trust law to creatively and intelligently respond to my word. I live in calm assurance. And so it is. So that's where the spiritual warrior lives, from that place of calm assurance. And as we begin to go into part 2 of our discussion, I would like you to enter into that place where you can feel what calm assurance feels like. So our discussion this week is addressing pretty much the challenge, which is the way of life for the spiritual warrior, which many seem to find sort of difficult. And the difficulty comes in the actual walking the walk. Now, before I go any further, I would like to say that for each person, the actual how to live that life of the spiritual warrior is unique to each individual. It's like fingerprints. Yet, despite the uniqueness, there are some threads or seeds or similarities that continue to unify all of us. And so what I'm intending to do today is to offer some ideas, some concepts that can undoubtedly provide guidance as we step onto this warrior's path. Now, in order to live as a spiritual warrior, we must do as many of the great masters have said for us to do, which is to go within. And as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. Spiritual warriors are those who enter into themselves. They enter into the metaphorical closet and they close the door to the world so that they enter into this place of quiet, of intimate solitude, where the still small voice of the divine can be heard clearly. So it's therefore through prayer and meditation that we access the infinite. In prayer and meditation, we are praying from a consciousness of the divine, praying from an awareness that there is nothing lacking and that all is ordered perfectly. Now, actually, you know what? It might be clearer and easier for you to conceptualize and to put into practice what I'm speaking about if I use the 5 principles of unity. And I'm going to use those as sort of as our guidelines. And there's an excellent book by Unity Minister Reverend Ellen Davenport, and her book, The 5 Principles, A Guide to Practical Spirituality, goes into great depth about what we're going to discuss here, which I'm going to briefly outline. So let me give you the 5 principles. Principle number 1, and if you go online and look for the 5 principles of unity, depending on what unity church you go to, the 5 principles may be worded slightly differently, but the essence is still the same. So, principle 1, there is only one presence and one power active as the universe and as my life, God the good. 2, our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. This God essence, called the Christ, was fully expressed in Jesus. 3, we are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. Principle 4, through prayer and meditation, we align our heart-mind with God. Denials and affirmations are tools that are used. And principle 5, through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth that we know. So those are the basic outline, or the 5 basic unity principles of what it means to be or to live a spiritual life. So now that you have those 5 principles, you know what it means to live a spiritual life, or live the life of a spiritual warrior. So I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I guess I'll chat with you. Okay. I get the point. You want me to stay a little bit longer and go into a little bit more detail, and since you asked me so nicely, I'll go ahead and go and do that, because, I'm sure the producer would like me to stay a little bit longer, too, because then they don't have to fill the extra air time. So let's go ahead and discuss Principle 1 a little bit more in depth. There is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and as my life, God the good. So there is nowhere that God is not. Now, I know that word, God, has tension for a lot of people. I run into a lot of people, and they really don't like that word, God. And it's because of what that word has, over time, what it means to them. And it's what society has made it mean to them. Let that stuff go, because what I call water, the Japanese call mizu, the Spanish call agua, and biologists call H2O. And yet the name is not the substance. And as Shakespeare reminds us, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So whatever you call the divine intelligence, whether you call it God, whether you call it love, mind, universe, energy, Abba, or Bob, it's all present and it's all good. So let it go. Let the stress and tension go, because the name doesn't matter. The essence is what's important. So, being all good beckons each of us to shift our awareness and focus only on the good, because that's all there is. There's God, God is good, and all that God created is good. There's nowhere in the Genesis where it says, and God created this, that, and the other, and said, oh my goodness, I messed up. Oh God, that's me. I messed up and I need to start over. It doesn't happen. God creates only of itself, from itself, and that can only be good. So the whole concept of bad or evil for this paradigm that we're talking about simply doesn't exist. There is no bad or evil, only God and only good. So you ask, well, what about people who steal or kill or rape? Well, if we accept this belief, then they too have God as being present within them, around them, and ever present. So keep in mind that it's not really possible to truly know the mind of the infinite while we're in the finite of human form. So there comes a certain point of suspending our disbelief and saying, it simply is all good and all God. And with that awareness comes compassion, because then we see that God is in all, and we do what we can to then assist them in waking to their divinity. We no longer feel the need to condemn them, because condemnation will never bring about compassion or unconditional love or true change. Okay, so in the book, Reverend Ellen says that Principle 1 maintains that we are one with God. We're not separate. We're not being watched by God, but we are literally immersed in the divine. And as the Apostle Paul told the Athenians, we live, move, and have our being in God. And in oneness, God lives and moves and has expression in us. Reverend Ellen goes on to offer several considerations just as a way of sort of addressing the question of the existence of evil. And she says, just consider this. Humans were created with free will, and we make mistakes. The word sin originally meant missing the mark. Some people miss it by miles. Consider this. Good and evil are simply labels that humans give to events based upon our opinions at that time. What first appears to be a tragedy may turn out to be a blessing. Consider this. The human species is immature. The Aramaic word that became evil in the Bible is bisha, which means immature or unripe. Hence, the biblical reference to evil fruit. It wasn't ripe. We as humans are immature or unripe, not yet living from divine consciousness. Then there's we can't see the big picture. Events have meaning that we simply do not understand. Although later we might see the gifts that were brought to us through the most difficult times in our lives. We are creating our world through consciousness, which is principle 3, which most people don't even realize, much less know how to handle. Our every thought, feeling, and word sets up a response from the universe. But we have only a glimmer of the understanding of how to create our experience deliberately. So it's time for our first break. Thank you very much for listening to Living a Sacred Life. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. Stay tuned.
Your online community for positive change. Seventh Wave Network.
Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web.
Our society is spiraling out of control. Are you stressed out and concerned about the events occurring around you? Is there hope? Yes, there is. Tune in to Living in the End Times, featuring your host, Monita Dukia, who will help you understand and navigate these perilous times. Living in the End Times airs live Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern Time, on 7th Wave.
There's a course offered on Seventh Wave Network that you never saw offered in college. One that provides information on how to transform ancient wisdom teachings into everyday life. You'll learn how to create from your spirit and explore the world with all of your senses. Participation is encouraged. Enroll in Spirituality 101, the course you can't afford to miss, with your host, Reverend Norma. Class is in session every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific Time, in your favorite classroom. Seventh Wave Network.
Awakened media for a transforming world. Seventh Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymont Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. Or you can send an email to seventhwave@pfcls.org. Now, let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
Okay, and welcome back. So, Reverend Ellen gives two more things for us to potentially consider referencing evil. What we call evil is an expression of mass consciousness. We all contribute to it through our angry and violent thoughts, the energetic vibrations we pour into the one mind. The energy inevitably expresses somewhere, just as an erupting volcano releases heat from the earth. And lastly, she says to consider that we're balancing the events of a past life, sometimes called karma. This is not so much punishment or reward as a reconciling accounts and an offering of an opportunity to experience life from all sides. Those theories reflect the imperfection of human beings, but not the existence of a force of evil. If God is all that is, then there can be no other power. There is no devil, no Satan, no adversary doing battle for our souls or luring us to the dark side. If God is absolute good, then what we consider evil cannot be real or permanent. I know for many people that may be a challenging concept to grasp, which is why Reverend Ellen says, just consider it. Just marinate on the thought of, could that be possible? Let's move on to principle 2. Our experience is of God. Our essence is of God. Therefore, we are inherently good. This essence, God essence, called the Christ, was fully expressed in Jesus. So, Reverend Ellen says that for her, the concept that assisted her in understanding this idea was to see God as both transcendent, all there is everywhere, and eminent, personal, within. So we are the divine expressing in human form. We are not humans who have a soul, but rather we are a soul that manifested a spiritual vessel, a temple, in which to experience the earth plane of existence. We are a soul that has a body, which also has an ego and a personality in order to know the human experience. Our spiritual growth is about remembering who and what we truly are. It's like, how do I want to say this? It's almost like there's the ocean, and I use this analogy a lot, but for me it's clear. It's like the ocean somehow believing that it's separate. Somehow believing that it's separate from the ocean, which clearly is not possible. The wave is part of the ocean. But understanding and living from this place of oneness and from awareness, for many people, is the challenge. But it is possible. All that God is, you are as well, in essence. The Christ dwells within, and you have access to all of the isness and allness of the universe. When you are able to live from that place of experiential awareness, not just head knowledge, but truly being able to experience it. And I love that Reverend Ellen uses a quote from Deepak Chopra's book, The Third Jesus, as she prepares to close her discourse on Principle 2. So Deepak says, I want to offer the possibility that Jesus was, as he proclaimed, a Savior. Not the Savior, not the one and only Son of God. Rather, Jesus embodied the highest level of enlightenment. He spent his brief adult life describing it, teaching it, and passing it on to future generations. Jesus intended to save the world by showing others the path to God consciousness. So, when we follow in the footsteps, per se, of Jesus and do as he taught us, living from that place that he was the literal example, then we understand that we and God, or I and God, are also one. We're not separate. There's no God out there and me down here. We're all one. It's not possible to be separate from God any more than it's possible for the wave to be separate from the ocean or a sunbeam to be separate from the sun. Principle 3. We are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. And I just would like to throw this out there that co-creators with God is as Michael Beckwith says, a linguistic convenience because it implies two separate. Me and God, we co-create together. I'm with God versus there just being one. So just understand that it's still one. It's not two separate entities or two separate beings. So principle 3 is, this is possibly one of the most challenging concepts because it places your life directly in your hands as your responsibility. Because made in the image and likeness of God, Reverend Ellen reminds us in her book that God is, if anything, a creator. The intelligence behind all that we know, and if we are expressions of a creator, how could we be anything but creative? Our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs have the power to create our reality, and in fact, they do. All the choices we make are made based upon our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs about them. Think about it. The deodorant that you use, the toothpaste that you buy, and the food that you eat is all based upon what you think, feel, and believe about them. Where we go, who we speak to, what we read, is also based upon our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. We can't escape this truth, and it's high time that we really understand it and put it to use consciously rather than unconsciously, because we've been doing that for far too much of our lives. And if there's something in your life that you don't like, through this principle, you have the power to change it. Robert Thurman, scholar, author, teacher, student, and friend of the Dalai Lama, said when he was quoting Shantideva that, and this is referencing being upset, he said, if you can do something about a bad situation, why get upset about it? And if you can't do anything about a bad situation, why get upset on top of that? In other words, if you can do something, there's no reason to be upset. Do it. And if you can't do whatever it is that you want to do in that moment, why be upset about it? You can't do anything about it. So shift your perspective, shift your perception, and then move forward anyway. Being upset is a waste of energy. So we're admonished or asked to, highly suggested that we become very mindful of our thoughts, our emotions, and our beliefs. And what this reminds me to do is whatever I focus on, wherever my attention is being given, is what I'm going to get more of. And Reverend Ellen says that imagine yourself as like you're a tuning fork, and your feelings in any given moment set up a vibrational tone. The universe picks up that tone and hums along, amplifying your sound. So if you're vibrating with joy, you're going to experience more joy. Yet, if you are vibrating with misery, you're going to experience more misery. And this is the entire concept behind the law of attraction. Whatever it is that you're holding in mind and heart is what you attract. You attract like circumstances, like people, events, and things into your experience. Everything around you right now is reflecting back to you something that you're holding as a thought, as a feeling, and as a belief. So spiritual warriors, much like the samurai, will utilize a Japanese term called kime, or focus. And it's, if you visualize holding a magnifying glass, the magnifying glass uses kime. It takes the sunlight, focuses it into a pinpoint ray of power, a laser. That's what we're being called to do, consciously and mindfully. I also believe that it's through our creative ability that we produce the fruits of the Spirit spoken of in the Bible. We produce love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And if we are to produce these, then we must also be planting seeds that will produce the fruits that we want to grow. In other words, every farmer knows that you can't plant apple seeds and get carrots. I've said this before. Your mind cannot be focused on injustice and you produce the fruit of justice. The very fact that you are focused on and putting energy into injustice is going to make the universe hum with the same tone of injustice. It's where your attention is. Shift your attention to justice. It's what you want. Don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you want. Put the energy to what you want. The universe will vibrate at that, hum with that, and bring you more of that. So I could talk about this principle, especially because for me personally, it was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn and then be able to put into practice. Because initially, there's no way this is my fault. There's no way, not that it's anyone's fault, but there's no way that I created this. There's no way that I brought this into being. There is no way that it was something that I was thinking, something that I was believing. I do not believe this. And it took me the longest time to really sit down and say, okay, what is life mirroring back at me? And then to realize, oh my goodness, that's where my thoughts are. That's where my beliefs are. That's where my feelings are. And once I shifted those, the outside world started to shift as well. Moving on to principle 4. Principle 4, through prayer and meditation, we align our heart-mind with God. Denials and affirmations are the tools that we use. Mark 11:24 says, "So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." It doesn't say, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that one day you might receive it, and it could be yours. It says, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received, past tense, received it, and it will be yours. So we're not to pray in a manner of wanting. We're to pray in a manner or a consciousness of already having. Praying affirmatively, we're making a declaration that our needs, our desires, our wants are already fulfilled. Once again, thank you for listening to Living a Sacred Life. I'm Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. You are listening to Voice America on the Seventh Wave Network. Stay tuned.
Listening on a higher dimension. Seventh Wave Network.
Goodbye, self-critical. Hello, self-thrilled. Can you define your talent in 6 words or less? Are you using your inner resource, intuition, to teach you how? Listening to Joyce Anderson of Conversations with Yourself will work your intuitive muscle to discover your divine talent. Each week, your host, Joyce Anderson, teaches practices to jumpstart your intuition as your GPS to becoming self-thrilled. From sports to business to music and food, talent is everywhere. Find yours. Joyce and her guests will share their how-to stories on being self-thrilled. Tune in to Conversations with Yourself, Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the 7th Wave channel, and ignite your talent. Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web.
Being Here with Ariel and Shia Kane is an ordinary person's guide to modern-day enlightenment. This show is an exciting exploration which opens the door to living in the moment. Don't miss Being Here. Tune in every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern with Ariel and Shia Kane right here on the 7th Wave Network.
Be extraordinary. 7th Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. Or you can send an email to 7thwave@pfcls.org. Now, let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
Okay, so a funny thing about... And that almost sounded like I was getting ready to start off as a joke. A funny thing happened to me on the way to the church. Anyhow, a funny thing referencing prayer is that many people pray as if God doesn't know what they want or what they need. And that they're praying somehow to inform God of their needs. I mean, prayer is like a FedEx where I'm sending a message to God. And it's almost like people don't realize that despite Jesus' reminder that your Father knows what you need before you ask. Not, oh, God gets the message or the picture while I'm praying. No. Long before you send the prayer, God already knows. Because God, being, and God is not some being that is omniscient, omnipresent. God is the very essence of omniscience, omnipresence, etc. God is that. So anyway, I just throw that out there because it's important for us to realize that God already knows. The infinite mind that is all there is knows what we desire before we put it out there. So we don't need to pray from that state of consciousness. And many people say, well, if God already knows, then why should we pray? That's a very good question. We're not praying for God's benefit. We're praying so that we put ourselves in a consciousness where we're in alignment with God, because this alignment opens us up so that we can receive, so that we can accept what God desires to give, because it is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. So prayer it's like the old analogy where people say that if the ocean was the infinite of God and you could go to the ocean and get as much water as you could, what would you go to the ocean with? Would you go with a bucket, a coffee cup, or a thimble? Or would you take some kind of pipeline and just plug it straight into the ocean and have it, take ocean, just move it? What would you go to the infinite and be able to receive? Many people cannot receive, so we resist the good that's already ours. Somehow we cannot accept it. We don't feel worthy. So our prayers often betray us on this, because our prayers if we really sat down and listened to what we're praying for or how we're praying, we would hear that we're praying from a consciousness of lack. We're praying from a consciousness of, I'm not worthy. Now, in conjunction with prayer, we also have to enter into that stillness that is meditation. And there are countless ways that anyone can meditate. So I suggest find a simple method that works for you and engage in that stillness of meditation on some daily practice, a daily basis. Because for the spiritual warrior, meditation is as vital as breathing. So, put it into practice. And I say simple, meaning you don't have to do some yoga practice where you have to sit in full lotus and chant, and you don't have to do that. There's a wonderful book that I can't remember the exact name, but it references meditating in a New York minute. Great book because it talks about how you can enter into that stillness, enter into that place of meditation in what the author is calling a New York minute. In that quick, I can do this now, enter into this stillness. So find a way to meditate and do it every day. Now, Reverend Ellen says in her book that the most effective prayer of all might actually be a wordless prayer, a period of silence where we simply align ourselves with the all that is, and we return to the wholeness that is our true nature. This is what the Buddhists call samadhi, a place of perfect stillness to make room for inspiration. The Tao Te Ching calls it, or says about this, to bide in silence, and the radiance of the Spirit shall come in and make its home. Reverend Ellen later goes on to quote Reverend Eric Butterworth, who in his book, The Universe is Calling, he writes about prayer. And in that book, one of the things he says is, and this is important because I notice a lot of people do this. When you worry about a loved one, the child on the way home from school, the wayward youth who has run off to some commune, the husband with the alcoholic problem, or the friend in the hospital, you are putting the full weight of your consciousness on the side of their difficulty. You must heal your concern. You must let go and release your loved one into God's care and keeping. The work to be done is in you, on your consciousness, not in the other person. The last thing that we want to do when we're praying for others is to cover them in our own fear and our anxiety and our sense of doom and gloom. And be mindful, because Reverend Ellen goes on to remind us that simply saying positive words will not mask a fearful vibration. The universe is not fooled. Just because you dance in church and shout hallelujahs, saying, I'm blessed and highly favored and all is good and all is blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But what you're thinking and what you're feeling and your true beliefs will betray, and the universe will hum to the song, to the vibration that you're truly putting out there. So it's important to find that place within ourselves. And this is one reason why oftentimes they say, rather than you pray for my mom or my sister, or rather than I pray for them, I may ask you to do it, because you can come from a place of you're not feeling fear for my child. You're not feeling the worry that I'm feeling for my mother. So you're able to truly offer and enter into that place of consciousness where all is well. Because where I am right here, right now, today, I may not be able to deny the fear and step out of that. So once again, it's important for us to come back and center ourselves and truly assess what it is we're thinking, what we're feeling, and what we believe in. So lastly, we have Principle 5. And Principle 5 is the actual walking the walk principle. And we're to live consciously in the awareness of the 4 previous principles, and to take action as is guided by our higher self. And it's more about being more so than it's about doing. This is why Gandhi says for us to be the change. He didn't go out and say you have to do anything. For it's in the being that the doing will flow easily and effortlessly. You know, often we get so attached to our outcomes and we get obsessed. We want to do more. I should be doing something. And this is why so many of our goals and our intentions, etc., fail, because we become so obsessed with how to do that we stagnate the flow of the universe that's moving around us and in us and through us. So when we come back from this next break, we're going to talk more about this final principle, how to be present and how to step out of the concept of doing so much. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Listening on a higher dimension. Seventh Wave Network.
There is a lot more going on in religion and government than what high-ranking officials are telling you. The Bible uncovers the truth, prophecies, and a world of opportunities. Get the answers you need when you tune into the program To the Stars and Beyond with your hosts Michael List and Adam Hong. We'll explore the religious and spiritual beliefs from ancient history to the prophecies that are shaping the world and current events of today. To the Stars and Beyond airs live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern on Seventh Wave Network.
Yes, you can live a more positive and spiritual life. One step you can take each week is to tune in to What We're Thinking About with host Ken Ludwig. This program is designed to provide thought-provoking discussion after each week's show. Ken and his guests will challenge you to look at things in an entirely different way, to step outside the comfort zone and see the universe as it truly is. What We're Thinking About can be heard live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America 7th Wave channel.
Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web.
The new home for visionary positive change. Seventh Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymont Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. Or you can send an email to 7thwave@pfcls.org. Now, let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
So once again, our final principle: through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth that we know. And as I was saying, that many of us are obsessed with the how and we want to do, rather than if we find a way to simply just ask or to know the what and the why, we're placed in a state of allowing that allows the actual how to unfold. So by being in alignment, be in alignment, the rest will flow perfectly. There's a sort of non-attachment to the result because you're being in alignment. And in that, you know that all is and ever will be perfect and good, and it's going to flow naturally. It's going to flow without restriction. And it's in this place that unconditional love and compassion can occur. It's an inside job that begins within each of us. That being the change is about each of us being the change, not changing anyone else, being the change. And we're supposed to, in doing that, bring more peace to the world. Be peaceful. As Reverend Ellen says, putting principle into action starts as an inside job. That means not yelling at the kids or making obscene gestures at other drivers. It means being patient in the grocery line, even if the person in front of you clearly has more than 10 items for express checkout. You don't have to find a solution for the Middle East to contribute peace to the planet. If enough people begin to be peaceful, peace will erupt on the earth just as violence does now. Simply the act of walking the walk, talking the talk, and being this agent of peace, this spiritual warrior, it causes the universe to hum. And the more people the universe is humming with the song of peace, then the orchestra that is peace will surround the earth, and that will be the only song that is sung. And this is sort of why I chose the title for today's show, which comes from a longtime mentor of mine, Yoda. Don't know if you know him, but Yoda and I we're pretty close. But anyhow, Yoda said to another classmate of mine named Luke that you either do or do not. There is no try. Likewise, each of us is charged as spiritual warriors to either live this way or not. There is a certain level of conviction or commitment that comes with practicing spiritual principles. And living these truths, it's like swimming. Either you're in the water or you're not. You cannot get halfway in the water and have the nerve to call it trying to swim. You cannot hang half in the plane and half out of the plane and give skydiving a try. Either you jump or you don't. It's as simple as that. So the word try somehow gives many people permission to fail. It's like failing with ease, because we simply respond, well, I tried. Yeah, whatever. You either did it or you didn't do it. Commit to moving forward and doing it by being the spiritual warrior. And that, I know the concept of what I just said is do it. But you're doing it by being it, by enveloping your entire consciousness around what we're talking about. The doing happens. So I say, as if I'm not mistaken, it was Kennedy who said, if not now, when? If not, who? I say vow right here, right now, today, to take each of these principles or any principles that resonate with you on a higher vibration of oneness and compassion and love, and simply be. And the rest of everything else will unfold naturally, perfectly, and divinely. As an artist myself and a martial artist, I know that practice is the key part of developing my skills. With drawing, I'm not trying to draw. I am drawing. I am practicing by drawing the human anatomy, for example. But I'm not trying. I'm doing it. I'm drawing. It may not be exactly the picture I want or look the way that I want it to look, but that's where the practice comes in. Because the more I do it, the more skill develops, the more awareness develops, the more accuracy develops, my artistic eye develops. If I'm practicing, say, for example, sword strikes, and I want to use my sword striking with focus and control on a particular strike, I'm not trying to do this. I'm doing it. I draw the sword, I take it out of its scabbard, I raise it into whatever sword position, Jodan, and I strike. I'm not trying. I did it. I just did it. Once again, it may not be as focused as I wanted or as controlled as I wanted, but through repetition, the skill develops. The practice increases the ability of the spiritual warrior. And that's what each of us is being called to do, to apply that to our spiritual practices as well. This is how each of us is called to walk the walk of a spiritual warrior. The more you do it daily, without judgment, without, oh my God, I didn't meditate today. Okay, meditate right now. You just thought about it right now. So take 3 conscious breaths. It's as simple as that. Center yourself right here in that moment. Breathe now. Say an affirmation now. Say an affirmative prayer now. Because in that now moment, which in all reality is all you have anyway, when you have the realization, you have the awareness, do it then. Put it into practice then, because it will create the likelihood of you being more mindful and more present when you're at the grocery store and you have 3 items and the person in front of you in the 10 items or less line has 23. It'll kick in and you'll say, wow, in this moment I have an option. Get into a different line or simply stay here. And in staying there, envelop myself in being patient, being patience, be compassion. Not just compassionate, but literally envelop myself in being the essence of compassion. That's what we're supposed to do. In every now moment, when each situation comes to us, as I said before, look around you. Whatever life is reflecting back or mirroring back, identify what you want to keep. Are there people who are negative, who are bringing you pain and misery? Well, it may be worth the time to assess, do I really want to keep these energy vampires around? And funny thing is, in all honesty, when you change your vibration, anything and anyone, any experience, all of it will no longer be in your experience. It'll no longer be in your life per se. The family members who are not in alignment, in an odd way, they'll stop communicating with you the way that they do. They may still talk to you, but something will shift. The employer, maybe your job will no longer be what it is or where it is or with whom it is. By changing your vibration, by changing your spiritual practice, by you walking the walk of a spiritual warrior, it changes who walks with you and where you're walking to. That's important. So take the time each day to assess, what do I want my spiritual practice to be and why? Don't worry about the how. Don't worry about the what you need to do. Focus on the what do I want? Why do I want it? Put that into practice. Assess the whatever spiritual practices you want to do. Like I said, there are 1,000,001 ways to meditate. Affirmative prayer, yoga, Tai Chi, all of these are forms of meditation, reading spiritual books, etc. Find what resonates best with you, what raises your vibration to a place of love and compassion, and put that into practice. So that ends our session on do or do not. There is no try, as my mentor Yoda would say. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, once again, feel free to email me during the week or at any time, or feel free to give me a call. In the meantime, I'd like to take this last couple of moments to remind you that next week we have our guest, spiritual teacher and author Howard Falco, who will be on talking about his book, I Am, which is an amazing book on, well, actually what the cover says, I am the power of discovering who you really are. So I encourage you to, if you can, go get his book so you can, catch up on what we're going to be talking about. Tune in next week when we are talking to Howard Falco. And in the meantime, go ahead and go out and live the life of a spiritual warrior. Just go out and be what a spiritual warrior is. And you'll notice not that miracles happen, because they're already happening, but you're going to notice that they're everywhere. Just being in that place of oneness, you'll see that everything and everyone is connected to the divine. Everything and everyone is inherently perfect and good. So go out and live a sacred life. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. This has been Living a Sacred Life. Looking forward to chatting with you next week. Take care. God bless. I love you all. Bye-bye.